Hey, I'm back.
we couldn't keep him away. We actually tried to move the entire thing away, and it didn't work.
Well, you know, you can't
found
win
us
them all.
anyway.
Welcome to Brewing Controversy. We are on a wing and a prayer for David tonight, ladies and gentlemen. He's got some kind of fuckery occurring between his computer and the outside world. We don't know if it's the AT&T Caddyshack hole series being dug in the neighborhood, or if it's the old router that we shouldn't even say it out loud. It's like Voldemort. You can't mention it by name. Bad things will happen.
It's been a good one, but the new one is in the Amazon cart like even before we started this. Like I think that's what set it off. Is it got its feelings hurt, right? It got its feelings hurt when I went and put the new router in the shopping cart.
That's what it is. Yep, it's on strike. You're gimping along with questionable router, and I have temporary, not my favorite lighting because my ring light bit the dust, and I went ahead and invested in a more expensive one that takes a while to ship, apparently. So I have a improvised lighting that's a little bit unbalanced, but it's doing the trick. Welcome to Brewing Controversy. I'm Lucas, and this is David, and we have beer to talk about. We have current events to talk about. If you've somehow never done this before, you show up, you watch us, you heckle and participate, and we may put you on screen and respond accordingly. We are live on YouTube and Facebook simultaneously, and we're starting the show drinking from the same beer.
Right?
We are both enjoying
I tossed mine.
Founder's Fruitwood, which I frequently keep in my beer fridge and enjoy time to time. This is a cherry ale, Asian maple syrup bourbon barrels. It's just so good. It's one of my favorites from their barrel aged series. You poured yours in a actual glass.
Yeah, mine's in my stein.
Assuming that it will render, we'll look at your. It looks good though. It's a pretty beer. Hold it up for a second and sit still so that it actually catches up to you, and then we can see how purty it is. Yeah, so it's not bad. It's a really nice looking beer. It's a good tasting beer too.
Oh.
If only you could see how rough you look some of the time on this stream. It's really amusing.
See, that's the thing. Like every now and then I'll get a little glimpse of it, and then the rest of the time, I from my perspective, I'm looking about even.
Yeah,
so
right. It doesn't really show you when you have a problem. You don't get to see yourself. You just get to see the little alert that says your stream sort of sucks. But
yeah, I have that little thing up in the corner right now. It's yelling at me about. And like the thing is, like in a few seconds, it seems to go away, and then it'll come back. Yeah, this is pretty bad. We're probably.
You know what? It's either some of the work or the router, or maybe it's a Cartman's mom situation. Is there like an increase of German porn to the household? Anything we need to know about?
Literally everything that I have access to is shut down now. Whether or not there's no streaming happening anywhere on this floor of the house, I can tell you that.
So okay.
But actually, now that I think about it,
your torrent of Frau Does Berlin has been suspended.
No Schwansticker porn.
Well, as people know from last week when I popped in briefly, I took a little field trip, a little work trip, and took the opportunity to get my first exposure to New England. And I've, of course, brought some show and tell from my trip. Some of it's beer, some of it's culture. And I just want to say, I'm a sucker for old buildings. I think you know this about me. A lot of people that watch know this about me. I loved some of what I saw. So I'm going to throw a few things up here. First of all, it's an old mill town, and there were some really cool buildings to see in Nashua, New Hampshire.
I just want to point out real fast, Lucas, you've hit peak old man. You're giving everyone a slideshow.
Well, we're building to a very important social point. I was digging the architecture on some houses, beautiful, beautiful homes. And then here's what I like about the North, David. There are Civil War monuments in the North, but they say the right shit. For instance, the men of Nashua who served their country on land and sea during the War of the Rebellion, the appropriate name, and aided in preserving the integrity of the federal union. I just love Civil War monuments in the North. But then, and this is really where we're going with this, I looked up stuff to see, and I found that New Hampshire has one of the starkest, most really truly gripping and well designed Holocaust memorials. Look at this shit.
Oh, wow.
In the icy, snowy landscape, it's even more like spot on. I went on purpose knowing that it might be more badass and poignant in the snowy, icy conditions. But it really, really is a good memorial. Anybody that goes to New England area should make their trek to see this. Check out the concentration camps represented by the big walls and the evil looking. I mean, it's just so well designed. It's really on point. So I strongly encourage people seeing that. So all kinds of monuments that have the right things to say in this particular neck of the woods.
Huh.
So it was a fun trip.
No, sounds like. Although, again, even with that, you still hit peak old dad.
Just wait, we haven't even gotten to the slides for the beer.
Oh,
so
Jesus.
So we're here doing our weekly thing. We usually pick out a pet topic a piece, and then we lay into something in a mutual, like, you know, sociopolitical verbal gangbang of sorts. We definitely encourage you to say hi when you sign in, drop in, say hello. I have a favorite subject this week every year, and I get to go first. And this is actually not going to be a departure as it might seem, because there's some social commentary to be found in this year's Super Bowl ads. So, David, you only got to watch a quarter?
I got to watch less than a full quarter before I had to sit on the side of the road waiting for a tow truck for the rest of the evening.
So you were gonna go home and like pick the game back up, but it just got totally blown off.
Yeah.
You had a vehicular
Yeah, the
issue.
tow truck showed up about midnight, a little after midnight.
Gee whiz. Wow. Wow. Okay.
Well, I mean, it being Super Bowl Sunday, I was like,
I could see it. Given where you were, geez, you could have walked home faster.
Except it was really fucking cold. I probably would have froze to death. But
just an icy David on the side of the road, clutching probably a growler and
pack
a work
of
hat or something. So, every year, since it is my industry, it's my area of work, I apply an academic scrutinous nod toward advertising. There are lots and lots of lists. I tend to follow a lot of the ad week journalism since it's in my field. So on the 30,000 mile level, their top 10 is the Planet Fitness Lindsay Lohan ad, the Lord of the Rings of Power trailer, which is damned exciting if you're a nerd, or not even really a nerd. It's just damned exciting because it's Lord of the Rings and it's going to be like a phenomenally expensive series. And it's always nice when somebody spends a shit ton of money on a series, as long as they keep it. Nissan Thrill Driver was kind of out there already before the show, but they had like a culmination into the real thing. Irish Spring, welcome to Irish Spring. Squarespace, Sally's Seashells. Now, I really liked that one. I don't have any social commentary from it. I'm just a sucker for Zendaya. But also a lot of these are better in the long version, like the 1 minute one. You can go online and watch them. The 30-second or 15-second sometimes takes out a lot. And that one actually is way better of a story in the 1 minute. So let's see. General Motors, Dr. E.V. Ill, which was awkward and weird, but it I don't know if Dr. Evil wasn't always awkward and weird. It just seemed funny at the time. So it's all right. It's an interesting take on bringing those guys back into relevance. Here's one of your favorites, David. FTX, don't miss out, was one of the many, what did I tell you? There were 5 crypto ads. In my attempt to raise David's blood pressure yesterday, I didn't realize how bad of a situation he had already been through with his vehicle, but I like to use his crypto disgust to get him riled up. There were a lot of crypto ads. I don't know if you got to see any of them after the fact, but
no, I literally
varying degrees of disgusting.
All yesterday was devoted to working out with the insurance, like how the hell. Because, all right, folks, if you want to hear the stupidity of the world right now, I had the tow truck drop my car off at a tire and wheel place.
Oh,
Nato. And so I call them in the morning and they say, well, you know, first of all, they told me my wheels were destroyed. I'm looking at the car and I'm looking at the pictures being like, our definitions of destroyed are very different things. I mean, like, does someone take a bite out of your sandwich and you tell someone ate your whole sandwich? Because that's what it looks like here.
Yeah.
So they said I needed new wheels. So, but they can't order wheels. They can put them on, but they can't order them. So then I call my insurance and say, hey, obviously I need to take my car someplace else where they can order the wheels and put them on. Well, it turns out every place else can order the wheels, but they can't put them on.
So is it that you're trying to get the OEM wheels?
I don't care. Wheels will work. I mean, I'm looking at them being like, one's dented. One I can see like, okay, if you were lazy and you didn't want to work on that, I could see, and we should go ahead and replace that one. The other one, I'm looking at it being like, what? He even took a picture of it, and I showed the picture to the insurance company, and they're like, they said we have to replace the wheels on that?
Huh. Well,
and apparently, like the place they took it to were like, oh, we got to replace the. I'm like, this is a racket. I am now in the middle of a racket right now.
Retail tire places do have limitations, but I've always been able to special order specifically some aftermarket wheels that I wanted that I thought were badass and have them installed the whole 9 yards. But maybe things have changed.
Well,
so
just to finish the real quick, the irony of all this, after I spent yesterday all on the phone with insurance the entire time, I'm actually going to pay less than it was cost just to replace the 2 tires on the car because my insurance kicked in.
Wow. Well, the one time I had major damage, I got a big enough check to replace all 4 wheels and 2 tires when it was supposed to just be 2 tires and 1 wheel, but I switched from OEM, where the value of the money had been figured, to all aftermarket stuff. And I will never look back. I will be an aftermarket rims and Yokohama tire guy forever, probably. The hell with Acura's OEM wheels and their recommendation of Bridgestone. David hates crypto with a fiery passion, and crypto was very present in the Super Bowl ads. There was even the one that everybody is claiming is the best, and we'll probably get to that one, but there's a lot of variety of approaches. But everything that you had to say recently on this program about bamboozling regular people and taking advantage of what little nest egg Ma and Pa have was playing out in the themes of these ads, and I thought of nothing but that conversation every time they came up.
And again, just in case anyone missed that episode, I'm going to say it one more time. Crypto is a collectible Yoda doll. That's it. It's a collectible Yoda doll.
So then there was number 3 on the ad week list, Rocket Mortgage, which I usually am vastly annoyed by, but they did an ad called Dream House, which I'm a sucker for Anna Kendrick, speaking of nerd crushes. And it starts off seeming like it's a Barbie commercial, which you're like, what the fuck am I watching? But then you realize It's a gag on the housing market, and it's fucking hilarious. They have all these dolls that are done up as like investor guy and cash offer guy. Like there's all these different like categories of problematic pains in the ass when you're a regular person trying to buy a house. And Rocket Mortgage's whole point is we help. But then they go into the alternate real estate. Like we can't afford anything in this neighborhood, but maybe we can go over here. And then He-Man shows up and Castle Grayskull is the house, and it's fucking amazing. And so I am absolutely all in on that ad. That was a good one. So then Lay's somehow is their number 2. It's a cute ad. It's Paul Rudd and Seth Rogen. It's called Golden Memories. It looks like they're having a gay wedding, but it's not. Which would have been a better theme, I think. There's this weird thing where like Seth Rogen's marrying a zombie girl, turns out. So actually would have been better as a gay wedding. But anyway, and then number 1, back to your favorite subject. Everybody seems to be saying that Coinbase's QR code ad, which basically consists of a QR code bouncing around on the screen for, I think it's 2 minutes. They paid a lot. And you scan the code and you can enter to win money. I get it. I get what they were doing. I get why people say it's successful. But for me, the textbook best ad is the Travelocity ad with, oh my God, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Why can't I think of his fucking name? You know who I'm talking about. Famous actor. So he's walking along making fun of other kinds of ads and talking about, would you be, when you die, are you going to regret not buying the right beer or the right perfume or a flat enough TV? It's brilliant commentary on consumerism. And then he walks out the stage door from where they're shooting the ad and says, or will you be regretting the places that you didn't go? And I thought it was just, it's textbook perfection in every way. And, you know, I don't really know why it doesn't rate higher other than the fact that people are giving this crypto phenomenon way too much.
It's collectible Yoda doll. Also, I mean, Andrew, sorry, my screen's a little full right now, so I can't see if Lucas is posting comment. Oh, there it is. Yeah. I will always support everyone taking a swipe at Elon Musk. I support that. You know what? I'll say this, and I'm saying this in front of other people publicly. Even if TFG, which is his new acronym for that one, and you all know who I'm referring to, I would even applaud if he took a swipe at that.
Oh,
he's
you know what? I got
he's
that.
a con man investor, and that's all. That's all I'll ever be. They're both con man investors,
It
which I'm
wasn't
surprised.
Travelocity. It was Expedia. I shot my argument in the foot by not being able to remember the brand.
Have you seen the new kayak commercials? Which I'm really intrigued by, because I'm like, are you taking a swipe at? It feels like they're taking a swipe at kayak, or not kayak, at people denying CRT and reality and things. Like the commercials just keep on revolving around like, don't bring up kayak in front of like my parents. And like kayak inevitably gets brought up. They're like, kayak lies to you. Kayak isn't real.
Nice. So it's Ewan McGregor, and it's a Expedia ad called Stuff. So getting to the social point, crypto, the dark side, that was just unfortunate. I hated seeing it have so much traction. But my favorite thing about this year's ad cluster, and the reason that I wanted to talk about it in a cultural sense in our bubble of sociopolitical topics, electric cars. You couldn't have told me 20 years ago that this Super Bowl would have no clear ads for gasoline-powered vehicles by model. There was a high-minded, emotional first slot, actually, right after kickoff, way overpriced place to put social emotion marketing. But Nissan had a cool ad about brothers in the Paralympics. It was very cool, but it was a general ad. They didn't single out a model. So I don't really count that, because it's just a car maker saying, hey, we're great. We care about the Paralympics and all this stuff. There were multiple electric vehicle ads and they were good, and they're for vehicles that don't suck, including this Polestar. Have you seen this fucking thing?
So there's someone drives a prototype who comes to the restaurant, and I don't know who, because I saw the emblem and I'm like, I don't recognize that emblem.
It's owned by
They're
Volvo, apparently.
they're super high priced. They are ridiculously
That
priced.
one is. It's like $160,000. The new one that they advertised in the Super Bowl is $33,000.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So that's like a wake up, like, oh shit. But the best one, of course, is the Sopranos Intro remake using the electric Silverado. And it has Meadow Soprano driving in, just like Tony in the opening of the show, with the same fucking music. And that fetched my ass out of the kitchen real fast. I heard that familiar Alabama 3 bass line. I was like, Sopranos! And I came running through. And there it is. It's a shot for shot, but modern. So everything that you see is the modern version. And then she drives up. She parks perfectly with no problems. So for fans that saw the finale, that's actually a nod. And then she meets her brother, and they talk about the vehicle for the next generation. And it's a really well done ad. The fact that everybody, including Chevy, was bringing it with electric, that's a major cultural shift, I think, in the consumerism that the Super Bowl typically represents.
Well, I mean, because I think honestly, I think that the car manufacturers understand that fossil fuel just here's the thing. Fossil fuel I can only get from certain places. Electricity I can get from wind, I can get from solar, I can get from nuclear, I can get from hydro, I can get from methane, I can get from all sorts of places. It just makes sense at the end of the day to switch to an electric system. The only thing that we're missing now from modern electric cars is a faster charging option. That's about it.
Right. So the total tally is 6 out of 7 car ads were EVs. And it was Polestar, which the Polestar 2 is the one that makes reasonable budget sense.
I'm gonna have to look. I'm definitely gonna have to look that up.
GM landed with the Chevy. There was a BMW ad which had Arnold Schwarzenegger and I think it's Selma Hayek. And it's a good ad, but you spend more time trying to figure out if that's Arnold Schwarzenegger at first than you do thinking about it being a car ad. But he plays Zeus, which is fucking hysterical. Kia, Nissan, and Toyota. And actually, these guys missed one because somebody else had one. Hyundai had one. So these guys didn't list them all in the CNBC report that I'm cheating off of right now. Hyundai and Kia are probably the most comparable. These cars are varying degrees of weird looking. The Polestar is probably the sexiest looking one. But when you compare it to the Polestar 1, you see how many places they cut corners. Polestar 1, the one that you've seen, is dead sexy. Like,
having seen it in the wild, and because I took a moment and I looked in the window of it, and I looked at how the dash was set up, how everything was set up, and not that sexy, not that sexy at all. No, like literally, I'm like, this looks like an average commuter car.
Huh. See, I found the Polestar 1 to be like the ass end of it has that luxury thing, that kind of almost Bentley thing going on. Now, granted, we're still talking about $155,000 MSRP car.
For 100, and that's what shocked me is when I was looking at on the inside, I'm like, this doesn't look all that different from like a Mazda.
Ooh, I don't know about all that.
I'm telling you, I was standing there next to it, looking at the thing.
I'm sitting here flipping through the gallery right now, getting a tiny little happy about the wheel design and the shifter.
Hey, Rob, no, I didn't, because I didn't get to cheer for the team because I was waiting for a tow truck for the entire game.
That's right. You guys had a little beef over teams. So you know what? I got to say, and we'll move on to our next topic after this, but I got to say, I was kind of rooting for the Bengals based on the underdog thing. I was also rooting for them because I hoped that they would eventually teach their quarterback how to throw the ball before he gets sacked, which seems to be his MO. just to not throw it and get sacked all the time. I found some of the chokes to be interesting, like places where it's third down and you're thinking, surely you could get this on both sides. And they wouldn't. It's like, wow. But I don't know a lot about football. I admit to being the handicap viewer with my knowledge.
Well, I mean, I think and here's what I'd say, Rob. I think at the end of the day, it ended up being exactly what most people thought it would be, which was the cup show. When you have a receiver like Cup, it honestly, they could have put, they could have put the Lions back up there, and they still would have won with Cup, I think.
Now, before we depart this topic, I just got to put this up here so I can argue with you. This is not a Mazda. That is a sexy fucking car.
All right, so that with the color and the lighting, sure. When you see it in daylight and it's all like matte gray, not so much. I mean, the front end looks nice, but what I'm saying is when you are actually standing next to it, looking in the window, the inside of the car, I wouldn't be able to tell that the difference between that and a Mazda 3.
Okay. I have to defer. You've seen it in person. I'm just seeing the sexy marketing photos, which I'm falling for. But
well, because and I'll also tell you the one
accurate.
thing that kind of like makes it not quite as sexy is it's very plastic. That Polestar 1 on the outside is very plastic. So again, like when you're doing the lighting and it's all shined up, and I'm sure they've got it waxed all to hell.
Oh yeah,
it looks great. But when it's matte gray and it's not all waxed up,
yeah, I can see that. That's fair. Well, anyway, I was still glad to see it. I don't know. I'm still not sold design wise. Like the only electric cars that I think appeal to me come with baggage, right? Like I think the Tesla's sexy, but it's Tesla, and I would never be forgiven by you if I've ever purchased.
No, I would seriously. Oh,
plus
I won't tell that story now, but I will say this: I would drive up to Grand Rapids just to egg your car. All right.
Plus, they're all overpriced. Like those, they're not priced right.
I mean,
and then the BMW, I haven't looked up the price. It was the least weird looking that was advertised outside of the Polestar. But the Polestar is too plain, and I would love for Acura to, figure me out and offer a hybrid at least. But I'm pretty brand loyal there. I don't know what'll happen. They might actually do a hybrid of the Integra. That could change things a little bit.
Here's what I would say: until we get a potassium battery, which is where we really need to be going, is a potassium-based battery as opposed to a lithium-based battery. And there are entrepreneurs out there saying, I have a potassium-based battery. I just need you all to pay for it.
Yeah.
I think we all understand that it's going towards electric cars. I don't think that we're going to get mass acceptance until we get to a potassium-based battery. And once you get to a potassium-based battery, then the cost of that car goes through the floor. Because now I don't have to rely on lithium to replace the main battery. And number one, and number two, replacing the battery once it starts to wear out. Chew some bananas, asshole. There we go. we're good to go. Slap it in there.
I will say this: if I were to decide that I was a truck guy in a couple of years, which is possible up here,
that F-150E is just that's a beautiful.
I could be tempted by that F-150.
I mean, and also I will say this with the F-150E that most people can when they're giving ranges on that, they're assuming that you fully loaded the bed.
Right. Yeah.
So I mean, it will go forever.
Yeah.
Which is why power your house. They're like, oh, what?
I should point out that I think a big difference in the price on that Polestar. The Polestar 1 is like a 6-speed something transmission. The Polestar 2 that was advertised for mid-30s is a single-speed electric motor transmission. So that I imagine that's a big piece of that price drop. Anyway, let's move on. Let's go from the hopeful future of electric vehicles to the dystopian reality of David's pet topic. Because Russia be fucking around, y'all. And David's been watching it. David brings a lot more history and political science, formal, fucking academics to it. I'm gonna let him unload on this because I have a real short fuse. I'm over here ready to have World War III at any time. I'm just over it. I want to glass all these fuckers and make them indiscernible from fucking ice and snow and get it over with. But I realize, of course, that would mean that, a lot of major cities would be blown to bits over here or whatever. But I'm so tired of fuckers that are fucking around. We'll get to that more when we talk about Canada.
Yeah. So I am going to drag this up.
Oh, that's right. It's show and tell time.
There
he's sharing his whole screen, ladies and gentlemen.
That's because he won't let me share a window. I don't know. Or if it will, I don't know how to do that. But I can do this.
Blow that sucker up full screen for the people at home. There you go. That ain't bad. Look at these features. And now you're in a small enough window that when your shitty router experience hangs up on you, we won't really know.
Let me expand this because I actually can't see the tools when I take it all the way full screen. So I'm bringing up a map, and I'm doing this for a reason. So right now we're talking about what's about to happen in the Ukraine, which is that we have a bunch of Russian troops hanging out around here and around here and around here, which I really appreciate the fact that this map. Well, no, I don't do that.
and they're saying things apparently.
Oh, stupid!
It assumed you wanted a speech bubble.
Yeah, it did. Thank you, Apple. Around here, I got a triangle. Sure, why not?
That's Crimea, right? That's formerly Crimea.
Well, no, it is. It's still Crimea. It's just the Russians have taken it. I appreciate the fact that the map put it, and they're right here.
Really?
Which is that's Transnistria, which is a breakaway section of Moldova, which is protected by Russian troops.
Where does Romania fit in all this? Because that seems like a place
where a breakaway section of Moldova, not Romania. Where does Romania? I misspoke. It's Moldova. Breakaway section of Moldova.
No, you said that. I'm asking why. That seems like a strategically unstable position that should have been able to be squished.
It should have been, except the Russians ran their troops in there real fast, and no one wants to go in and dislodge them.
Yeah.
So that's where the Russians are, right? In those spots. And we keep on talking about the Russians wanting to take this. Let me delete that. We keep on talking about the Russians wanting to take really this piece of the country. And what they're really looking to do is unite all this and put it all in their basket. Or more than likely, delete. Probably do something like this. All that half of the Ukraine, all being put into Russia, is probably what they're making the case for.
So they want to redraw lines. You think
that's what everyone's looking at.
So where does this butthurt obsession with not allowing Ukraine to join NATO come into the mix?
All right, so I'm going to hit you with a little bit of history here. So the year is 1917. The Russians have just completed their second revolution for the year. Had a February revolution, and then they had an October revolution. And the October revolution brings the Bolsheviks to power and forms the Soviet Union.
I really hope I'm not the only person translating your voice in my head right now to one of those 40s newsreels.
So now we have the Soviet Union. And one of Lenin's big promises was he was going to get Russia out of the war. The reason the Bolsheviks were able to win or do anything was because they had the military on their side. Pardon me. So the military was one of the big factors because the military said we can't beat the Germans. It's not something we can do. We don't have the equipment. We don't have the leadership. We'd really like to stop fighting the war. And the price for the war was, and I'll make another little circle here for everyone. The price for winning the war was all of this,
Uh-huh.
basically everything in that circle used to be part of Russia. And then after Brest-Litovsk, which was the treaty that the Bolsheviks signed to end the war, and basically everything in that circle became independent. So the eastern half of Poland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Belarus, fuzzy, but also the Ukraine and Moldova, not quite so much, but all that became independent. And the Russians have been trying to get it back ever since. For instance, and this is where my argument is: this isn't actually about the Ukraine. That's the reason I'm leaving the map up, because you have to look and see this little bit right here. I'm going to circle this little bit right here. See, the Russians really think of the Ukraine as being part of Russia, and that's one thing. But beating up on the Ukraine doesn't actually get them anything. What does get them something is this circle up at the top: Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. These folks really don't want to be part of Russia. They've made that very clear throughout most of their history. And to the point where they sided with the Nazis against the Russians just for the hope that they would get the hell out of the Russian Empire. They were granted independence by Brest-Litovsk, and then World War II happened, and they all got shoved back into Russia.
Speaking of Russian overreach, I'm cracking up over the comments right now because either Russia or Trump's people clearly have some spam bots lurking in the comments. Look at this shit.
Oh God. Yeah, I just pulled that up so I could see it. Oh, actually, I'm going to move this over here so I can stop.
Hey, there you go.
There we go. Now I can see both. Hey, I've got two monitors. I can use
like
them
a
both.
pro. Look at you.
The only problem is I have to keep looking over here to see the.
So Ukraine in NATO would give some ally protection by default,
Okay,
right?
I also want to answer. I want to answer Andrew's comment here real fast, where it says the Russian people originated in the Ukraine. That is false. That is false. And here's why. The Rus, people talk about the Kievan Rus, and those are a early version of Russian, right? But if you're going to talk about, and here's the problem when we talk about Russian, we have the same problem when we technically talk about Greeks, because you have a lot of different invasions that happen and a lot of different Greeks, right? You have Doric, Ionian, Corinthian. I mean, the number of different versions of Greek that happen are almost the same as the Russians. If you want to look for, at least in the most recent centuries, who's been living in the Ukraine, it's really this kind of weird mixture of Ruthenians, Cossacks, Romanians, Poles. All these people kind of homogenized into what Ukraine became over the centuries, in terms of an ethnicity. The Russians who are now living in Russia are probably more closely related to, at least in terms of where their ethnicity lies and where their cultural roots really lie, to Novgorod or the Mongols, right, who conquered them. Which, I honestly feel like this whole territorial thing that the Russians have is that they're the only technically European country that ever lost to an Eastern power in war, but B, spent a good portion of their history as a subject country of an Eastern power. They were conquered by the Mongols. They had to pay tribute to the Mongols. They had to submit slaves to the Mongols. And it, again, the place where they threw off the Mongol domination was not in Kiev, it was in Moscow. So if we're really talking about more modern day Russians, I think we really have to look more at Moscow than Kiev. When we're looking at Kiev, and people refer to the Kiev Rus. I think we're really, in reality, in history, and in terms of ethnicity, culture, everything else, we're talking about two different peoples.
Speaking of different peoples, why do so many different peoples have so many different fucking pronunciations for the capital? I thought it was Kiev my whole life because I was exposed to and
And
occasionally
and
played
I
an
caught myself calling
arrangement
that.
of
Well,
music with it in the name, and I hear it on the NPR can't decide between three
well,
reporters how to pronounce the fucking thing.
because the issue is the Russian pronunciation is Kiev. The Ukrainian pronunciation is Kiev.
Because I hear that a lot. Yep.
I don't. Yeah, no. I mean,
Andrew points out the version of the
yeah.
story that's told to the Russian people. Oh boy, I don't know what version of any story is told to the Russian people at this point. And that's part of the
I mean,
question here.
and I got to say that the way the Russians have had to rewrite their history to not be the whipping boy of everyone else in between. Because if you really look at the Russian Federation
Or the bad guy, right? Like they
or
try
the
to.
bad guy,
Yeah.
but I mean, they've been the whipping boy for a lot of their history. And that's why I feel like they end up being the bad guys because they have this impression of being the whipping boy. But instead of like doing a whole history lesson on Russia, I want to get to the point of what I think Putin's really after and why this is far more dangerous. I want to say this, because the header on this is 3D chess. And right now, we're all looking down here at the Ukraine. This circle up at the top that I have for Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. There's a reason I have that. Under Stalin, a lot of Russians were shoved into this border region between the Russian Federation and these Baltic countries. And right now, Russia is using the presence of Russians here in the Donbass and here in Kiev to justify no, stop it. To justify these military actions, right? It's what's called irredentism. The problem is this. Right now, the Ukraine is not a NATO member.
Yes.
Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania are. So if I'm Putin and I want to break up the entire NATO alliance, attacking the Ukraine isn't what does it. I mean, that's a prelude, but it's not really what I'm at. What I really want is what's called the Friesland at the border of Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, because now I get to put NATO to the test. Will NATO come and defend these, quite frankly, inconsequential members, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or
what's the hate boner on NATO? Is it strategic or is it like ancient butthurt?
It's a story that they tell themselves. I mean, I was listening to an NPR thing today, and they were talking to Russians about like, well, if NATO still exists, then we must still be having the Cold War. That's the line the Russians are trying to use these days. Is that the fact that NATO exists proves that the West is still out to get us, and
I've tried to listen to the critics of NATO when they're not, when their last name isn't Trump, and I've been able to catch this one line of at this point NATO is useless. It's just kind of a us versus you club, and its only remaining reason to exist is so that Russia knows that they are not included. It's a not you Russia club.
I mean,
I don't know where to fall on that, but
I'll tell you where to fall on it. So when the Soviet Union fell, NATO looked around and said, "Oh my God, all of Eastern Europe just went straight to hell. We should have a mutual defense agreement so that we can all agree on how we're going to deal with the Balkans and Romania and Moldova and Bulgaria and the Czech Republic and Slovakia are separating. Oh my God, what the hell is happening?" And that was the first bit. Then the second bit was that was also present was, is Russia really done being a empire building despotic power? Because quite frankly, most of the state actors who worked for the Soviet Union were like, well, no, of course we're going to go constantly expand the Russian frontier further west, right? And on top of that, Russia also, when it was falling apart, left nukes literally everywhere, all over the place. The only reason we're having this conversation is the Ukraine did the right thing, and they said, we can't control these. We're going to give them up. And Ukraine is the only country thus far in human history to voluntarily denuclearize in its entirety. We wouldn't be having this conversation if the Ukrainians, I'm sure right now, are looking at like, damn, we shouldn't have given away those nukes. So I mean that what I think Russia is really after is breaking up NATO and forcing it. Putin gets to have his conquering hero mode. I mean, he already essentially owns Belarus by proxy. What he wants to do is he wants to show the rest of Eastern Europe, if you don't bow down to me, no one's going to come and help you. So my feeling is that he's not actually really after the Ukraine, because here's the thing: the Ukraine doesn't give him anything. Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania give him something. It forces NATO to either put up or shut up, which he, in his estimation, from where he's looking at it, and given what the German Admiralty managed to spit out the other day, he wouldn't. It sounds like maybe he wouldn't be wrong that Germany wouldn't show up to the fight. Germany is being very coy about standing up to Russia. But
boy, the map that you're showing doesn't do justice to the waterway in the middle of that country.
Yeah.
The what is it, Dnieper?
Yeah.
Where you've drawn that prospective line would be a water-based boundary.
Yep.
If they were able to push in, they could cut a boundary across that natural water border. On your map, it's essentially where that little inlet is up the middle, that little butt crack there at the bottom, all the way up to where the corner of your one circle is, which happens to also be where Chernobyl is.
Yep.
That's another piece of this I've been reading and hearing about, is that Chernobyl's in this fucking mix, and to execute the potential invasion here, there would be a bunch of going through Chernobyl with no telling what the fuck radiation going on anybody in the Russian military or anybody who opposes them. Hey, Willow's here. Hi, Willow. She was going to join us tonight as an honest-to-goodness Canadian to talk about our upcoming big topic. Didn't work out, but she's here watching, and we're going to try to get her on a future show to talk about the perspective of folks on the other side of the border and their own breed of redneck dumb fuck.
Right.
We'll give them a little love here in a minute. So what do you think? Like, there's all this, we're not going to invade, we promise, except you're building a massive army on three sides. And then
four sides, really, but
kind of, to me, limp-wristed U.S. response with Biden making a bunch of
because here's the problem: is Ukraine is not a NATO member, right? If Ukraine isn't a NATO member, and I'm going to go ahead and take this down. Ukraine is not a NATO member, and that's intentional, actually, because one of the requirements for being a NATO member is you have to not be engaged currently in a war. And NATO has correctly pointed out multiple times, you're kind of engaged in a war. So
is that part of it? Keep shit stirred up so that they can't be out of a state of war long enough to join?
I think NATO would drop that requirement if they really wanted to. They just don't. They really just don't want to go through the process of having to, because again, I feel it really feels like the Germans and the French are very, and even the British to a certain extent, are very suspect of expanding the alliance further, mostly because they want to trade with Russia. They want access to, I mean, not as much France, but I mean, Germany's problem is Germany managed to come out of rebuilding after World War II and build a energy infrastructure entirely dependent upon a resource they had none of natively, which
Right.
was natural gas.
Yeah.
Congratulations, you goddamn morons. German efficiency has its limits when it comes to, what's the most efficient thing to use to power this? Well, natural gas. Well, do we have any natural gas? No, we have zero, none, zip, nada, not one drop, not 1 cubic meter of natural gas.
Let's just pipe it in through Russia.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a silly issue for the Germans. It's why they're so hesitant to do anything, because it would require them to take a lot of the gains that they've earned from when we were kids and they had 10% unemployment and everything was going to hell, and basically flush a lot of those, because they'd have to go back and revamp their entire energy infrastructure to no longer need natural gas. Because the main problem is that what they're afraid of is people freezing in their homes because there's no natural gas to heat their homes. It's sort of like how in New York, so many people use oil burners to heat their homes.
Right.
In Germany, it's natural gas, and they don't have any natural gas. So, yeah. And again, so everyone's looking at the Ukraine. What I'm actually terrified about in this entire scenario is whether or not the Russians decide that they're going to go and try and take the Baltic states in the midst of this, and really put NATO to the test. Because I think that's what he really wants. What he really wants is to try and put NATO to the test and say, you won't defend your members. And if NATO won't defend the Baltic states, then Poland knows that NATO won't defend them. Romania knows that NATO won't defend them. Bulgaria knows that NATO won't defend them.
Do you
and
think
now
that's
they revert back to Russian satellite states?
That's what I was going to ask you. Do you think it's a shot at proving, hey, look, they don't care, but we'll be your friend?
Oh no, it's not that we'll be your friend. It's that you'll either side with us or we'll invade you, just like we used to.
Fair enough.
And they won't do anything to stop it. I think that's why Biden has to be so hardcore about this situation in the Ukraine. He has to keep NATO on side. Some people have been saying, well, NATO's gotten stronger. I don't feel like NATO's gotten stronger. I feel like the demonstration from especially the Germans has revealed that NATO has maybe gotten weaker. The surprise entry, however, into this little escapade has been the fucking Swedes.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, yeah. Sweden, we've never met something we won't be neutral about, has apparently decided our neutrality has some fucking limits, boys and girls.
Cool. As long as it's anti-Russian.
We used to have a Baltic Empire. We used to kick Russian ass like it was our job, because it was.
Yeah. So obviously, we all know the worst case scenario in anything involving Russia is that they get pissed off enough, they push the big red button, they launch a bunch of nukes and blow up a bunch of major cities.
That's not actually the worst case scenario.
Really? So
that's not actually the worst case scenario.
Is that the mid worst, or is that just off the table, you think?
That's pretty much off the table these days.
Good. Then let's blow the fuck out of them while we can.
Right. There's my letter. The big thing, and people have been talking about this, and Putin has alluded to it, which is he's okay launching the little ones. Not the big ones, the little ones. So if the Ukrainians, start slowing him down too much or stamp their feet too much, I'm not going to pop off a big strategic nuke. I'm just going to pop off a little nuke. Just big enough to clear out a division or so, right?
A couple little baby Chernobyls won't hurt anyone.
So I mean that's the big threat. And again, the big threat is Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. That would be probably how he would proceed an attack against them, is to pop off a bunch of little nukes to soften up the border defenses and then roll in. Ironically, nuking most of the people he claims to be liberating.
Yeah, right.
But
well, You know me, every day that now in my brain, there's a constant contest between being offended every day that Donald Trump wakes up breathing oxygen and being offended every day that no special forces team blows Putin's brains onto the nearest wall
I
and
mean,
causes a regime change.
I think the problem is who would take over. It would be just as bad. I mean, again, I really feel like we need to be looking at the Friesland and the Baltic states to make sure that they're okay.
I
Because
bet somebody's having that conversation that
if
we don't get to hear from.
yeah, I mean, because here's the thing: if I'm looking at the situation, I'm thinking that's what Putin actually wants. What Putin actually wants is to finally go NATO into a fight, and then watch the Germans and maybe the French walk the fuck away.
Mm.
And at that point, it's just Russia and the United States. And is the United States, without any major allies on the continent, going to try and keep up a fight? And the answer probably is no. Uh, because
Eh.
because we'd have no way to continue to supply. We'd have no one to get in front of the Russians before we could mobilize and get our troops there. It would be a pointless endeavor.
All these fake patriots want to act like they know what's up, and I'm over here seeing everything that I thought was the backbone of what made the U.S. of A. the U.S. of A. getting embarrassingly besmirched left and right.
Well,
So
because it's Putin knows that, ironically, while militarily and economically he's in a super weak position, diplomatically he's in a great position because he can pin France and Germany to the wall and say, "Are you going to support NATO?" And in both those countries, being members of NATO is not as big a deal.
what about the UK though? I mean,
Here's the problem.
we've gone in with just the UK before as our only major friend. W.
Yeah. In reality, after Iraq, at least in terms of a major combat force, the UK doesn't have anything to offer. Not really. The problem is that the once vaunted, here's the thing: if I'm the United Kingdom and I live on one big island, my focus most days should be the Royal Navy, right? It should be having a lot of ships that are good and can defend the island, and the Royal Air Force having a lot of planes that can reach out and touch things coming at my island. The only problem is those things are expensive, and we suck at budgeting. And as a consequence, the Royal Navy has gone to pot.
Well,
And
also there's a
the
lot
Royal Air
of
Force is
there's a lot of reporting on oligarch money and shit. There's a lot of crooked money from Russia tied up in the UK. They kind of have skin in the game and not in the best way.
not as much as most people think. And honestly, I think most of the UK government would be very comfortable seizing that money
Hmm.
simply because they could go back and win a whole bunch of populist points by saying, "Hey, we just seized all this oligarch money and this oligarch land, and now we're going to go put up new housing."
Hmm.
Right?
Okay, that's a play. Yeah.
I don't see. I mean, these guys don't buy enough MPs to be protected. The only thing the only thing that's been protecting them was, well, it's just a shit ton of money.
Yeah,
And do we
that's
really
fair.
want to touch them? That's been it. I think for the UK, the kicker is, and this is not something that's happened in Germany or France. The kicker is twice now they've had the FSB, the Federal Security Bureau, from the Russians launch chemical attacks inside the UK. The first time was with the polonium. That did not make the UK happy because, goddamn, you just smuggled some radioactive material to kill someone into the country. That wasn't so cool. The second time was when they gassed a portion of a city block. Luckily, only the target died, but it also got a bunch of other people sick with a chemical weapon that the Russians dropped there to kill a dissident. and it killed and nearly killed a bunch of people who weren't even related to it. So I think from the UK's perspective, they're done with it. These guys,
That makes sense.
but I mean, for the Germans, they're looking at the Nord Stream 2 going, well, wouldn't this just solve all our fucking problems? And the truth is, of course, it won't solve their problems, right? It won't solve any of their problems. It just makes problems worse. But there's not a lot of political will inside Germany. They're so afraid of the resurgent Nazism that's been relabeled alternative for Germany, so they can't ban them. But they're so afraid of these guys. They are terrified of touching anything with regards to the economy that's going to give these guys leverage. And so they're like, I've got to make a deal to keep the natural gas flowing instead of going back and saying, we made a terrible, terrible mistake in being very short-sighted about the flexibility of our energy infrastructure. And here's the thing, the United States has offered on multiple occasions to say, we'll deliver you all the natural gas you need, just stop. The only problem is it's going to be like 5 cents more per cubic meter, right? Because we've got to put it on ships and we've got to send it to you. The problem is when your entire energy infrastructure is that dependent on natural gas, 5 cents more per cubic meter is huge.
Yeah,
that's the problem. That's the problem. I mean, it sounds like nothing, but if I'm buying 2 billion cubic meters, 3 billion cubic meters of natural gas, a 5% knock-up on that price is hundreds of millions of euros.
Yeah, that's a tight spot. Well, let's see how it develops. Maybe everything will calm down, or maybe the shit will hit the fan by next week. All we know is we can try to wash it down with some beer. So if you're stashing a drink out there, it's time to crack it open because it's beer break time.
It is.
All right. You get to go first because
I get to go first. All right. So after last week's debacle with the Twinkie throne lies empty, which I even went and talked to Reds. I still have half a growler, 32-ounce growler of that stuff. I'm afraid of it. I'm really scared of it. And actually, I talked to the guys at Red. They're like, yes, we are also afraid of Twinkie throne lies empty. We are all afraid of Twinkie throne lies empty. And we're all like, that's not a golden stout. They're like, no, that is barley wine, and that is very scary barley wine. I'll tell you, like literally, if you might as well just do like a 5 count on a bottle of Jack. You'd have the same effect as you would drinking Twinkie throne lies empty. It is that powerful. It like we're all talking about, like, it was only 9%. I'm like, yeah, it's only 9%. Why? But it will get you drunk faster than anything else I've ever experienced in my entire life, except for maybe just drinking straight tequila. So Lucas asked for a Valentine's themed kind of beer for this week because we were considering making something Valentine's themed. And
well, we were going to both go after a bunch of Bell's heart themed beers, but that fell apart a little bit.
So I mean, I'm like, well, I have a Valentine's themed beer. So I have Bell's. I do have a Bell's Hop Slam. So,
which technically, if you think about it,
which I'm about to try.
Just remember that you have to move slow and let us focus because your stream doesn't show us everything that you're. So let that dial in for a second because it's a nice looking beer. So how's that taste?
It is it's actually kind of interesting. It's got it's got a very hoppy front end, like super aggressive, and then it has a nicely malty finish.
Okay.
Yeah, when I say it has an aggressive hoppy front end. Like the name actually does do justice to how this like treats your mouth, which is it runs in with a whole bunch of hops and then kind of can't like there's no middle. There is zero middle other than the residual of the hop, and then it has this like little nutty kind of malty finish.
Hmm.
I don't mind this. I mean it's 10%, so I'm not gonna like powerful, but yeah, I mean this is really smooth. It's got a really beautiful golden color
Yeah,
there.
it does look great.
Uh,
Yeah.
um, I mean it's classified as an IPA. I'd still call it an IPA. It really should be. I mean, I would say it should be an imperial, uh, given how it's doing. But I'm just amazed at how that flavor combo works. Of how aggressive it is, and then it how quickly it backs off and has that really smooth finish. I'm impressed by this. I'm actually really
Cool.
impressed by this. I because I'll be honest, I drank this in the middle of our section, this Edmund Oast that I've been meaning to do like my special one for.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I didn't because this kind of had a little bit of the same thing, except then it petered out. This has a strong front and a strong finish. And I honestly, with how strong its front is, I'm okay with it not having a middle whatsoever.
Okay.
Because it doesn't need to have anything in the middle. It has two really strong pillars, and I feel like the middle is just giving you a rest from them.
Well, I probably between this latest trip and the trip that we're taking in the beginning of March, I will probably be talking about a lot of New England beer on our beer breaks. So I've got one tonight. I've got one
He's
for
been
next week.
yankified.
A little bit. So one for tonight, one for next week, and then I might have to buy something to review from one of these guys if they've got distribution. But let me do a little more show and tell. I'll knock out one that I
Oh
may
god,
come
it's
back to
slideshow
it
time
later.
again. Oh
A lot of
god.
people are familiar with Flying Dog. On my way up there, Flying Dog, which is Baltimore area, they have a little brewery concept in the airport. So I stopped off and I had this is the Raging Bitch IPA, and it was adequately described in title. I'm hoping to go find it, pick it up, and do a better, more specific review of it. But that kind of got me started off, and then I hopped around and did some exploring, and I'm going to kind of go to some of those over the next couple of weeks. But where I settled on a favorite, and I thought I'd start at the top with my favorite, was Spyglass Brewing. So
Oh,
I
I've heard
went
of
to
them.
Spyglass. Charming little joint. Like it's not very big, but it's got great stuff. And I grabbed a flight, and I gotta say, uh, yeah, they've got some good shit. So I tried the triple helix, which I will review next week. The hypercube, which was a little more hoppy and bitey, but it had a sharp and smooth balance and a good citrus pinch to it. That's one of their IPAs. And the Tiki Time, which I bought a couple cans of to bring back and share with the lady. In this photo, the Tiki Time is the second one from the left. It's a fruit punch sour, and it you can't tell. Like you could have poured you could give it to somebody and say that it's just carbonated fruit punch, and they'd believe you, and they'd be in deep, deep trouble later because you can't tell, and it's so good. Um, so anyway, I did
What
not.
percentage is it?
I'd have to look that up, but I will. Let's see. Spyglass Tiki Time. It's not that it's high. I don't remember it being high. Um, it's that it's so like incognito. That was the thing that got me. Yeah, it's only 5%. It
Yeah.
wasn't the percent. It was that it just masqueraded so perfectly as you know not beer. Hypercube is 8%, and it's a IPA Imperial Double New England. So that one was quite good. And then Triple Helix, we'll get on that one next week. But I decided to buy among my cans. They also did mix and match 4-packs, which a lot of the breweries weren't willing to do. But that was good for me because I wanted to bring home a variety. So I settled on their dark roast espresso milk stout. Now, these can go either way for me. I do like the way that they format their labeling, if we can get it to focus. They do a basic concept, and they go down the center with all their labeling, and it's a universal silver can with a label on it. It's an 8%, and usually I find that espresso or coffee themed stouts, they come in for me on bitter water on the meh, and then sometimes they just really deliver a nice richness. So I'm going to see what this one's like. I put it in an actual glass to show its glorious darkness, which I like to often describe as black as hail, because this is dark. So let's see how this goes. Oh, yeah. Oh, pleasant, rich creaminess. It does not have that light coffee water bitey thing that sometimes happens. That's a good beer. It is definitely stouty. Definitely not more than one of those in a sitting for me, because that is heavy, but it's very good. It doesn't have any
on the front or the back.
Funky sharp. Do what now?
Where's the coffee flavor coming on the front or the back?
Well, it's got a good aroma. Like pouring it smelled like I was pouring coffee. There's a roasted coffee, like, when you get an espresso bean, a chocolate espresso bean, you chew it and you get that that husk of coffee. There's that at the front. In the middle is just smooth and rich, chocolatey almost. Way after, there's a little bit of a coffee bitter, but it's subtle. It's not like, because a lot of them, they take you down land, and it makes you need to keep drinking it faster to keep it subdued. This is a good sippers stout. Like, this one can sit on the table. You can, play a few rounds of D&D, whatever it is that you're doing with your coffee stout. I like it. It's very good. Very good. So, so that was my kind of adventure with Spyglass Brewing. I will be talking about one of their other beers. I will talk about Navigation Brewing. I've got some stuff. And then when I go to Vermont in 3 weeks, I'm going to load up there, up in the land of Olivia, going to her wedding. So a lot of folks see her commenting here frequently. She's my cousin. We're going to go out to the wedding up there, and I am promised a plethora of brewery options, for which I will also bring bubble wrap, like I did this time, to pack it home in the suitcase. Bubble wrap worked, and I found out that I wasn't the only person among my coworkers that came prepared to take home beer. There was a coworker from Texas who had the same plan and was raking a bunch of beer into the suitcase on the way out of town as well. Wow. It's very cool. So, David,
it's time for the Canadians, isn't it?
It's time.
It's time for the Canadians. Well, if you're still with us, if we haven't bored you to tears, and
it's time for the domestic terrorism up north. So, earlier in the week or whatever, I was going off about this with David, and he was like, I don't think you understand some of the history of Canada and some of the complexities, because I was all on the first of all, it got personal-ish because I've been to Detroit, seen the Ambassador Bridge. I think it's really rad. It's also my escape route from this hellhole when it finally goes all the way down the handmade tubes. And I'm sitting there looking at this bridge going, these motherfuckers are fucking with my route out of here. And they're also shaking my confidence in the greener pastures, so to speak, across the river. And they're making me think that there are some dipshit redneck fuckwads in Canada.
Oh, yes.
And I can't get away from them by going there. But I told David at some point, I'm sick of this bridge shit. I'm ready for them to fly a fucking A-10
And I was
Warthog
like,
down
no,
the middle and
they're not
fire up
going to
the
do it.
guns.
They're not going to do it. And here's why. And this is what I've been
And
arguing.
Willow
with
is still here, so she gets to hear my whole rant on blowing shit up in Canada. Apparently, she's in favor of my A-10 Warthog visual.
I mean, I'm in favor of the A-10 Warthog visual as well. I just don't think. I think with Canada's history with rebellion, I think is very different than our history of rebellion, right? So, if you're looking at a chronology of how we've dealt with rebellion, right after the revolution, we had Shays and the Shays and Whiskey Rebellion. And what did we do? We crushed those hard and fast. We like no regard, no humanity, no nothing. We like Washington himself leading the militia against the Whiskey Rebellion. Even though he at that point was no longer even president. He was completely retired, still rallied the militia and completely crushed these rebellions violently, quickly, and fine. And then the next major rebellion that we had was the Civil War, right?
Mhm.
And again, there was no mercy. No, they were obviously in the wrong. And the Whiskey and Shays Rebellion, maybe not. But it's kind of hard to argue when, the Sam Adams is the one saying, no, go ahead and start hanging them. With something like the Shays Rebellion, right? And with something like Shays Rebellion, we're arguably like maybe they weren't entirely in the wrong. And then Sam Adams is going, no, kill them all, look out, sort them out. In Canada, the problem that emerged is that since they weren't part of the revolution, they retained many parts of the British law system. And one of those parts of the British law system was a distinct three classes of individual. You had commoners, you had the aristocracy, and you had the monarch. And the problem is Canada didn't have any actual aristocracy, right? Because neither Parliament nor the Crown was going to be like, yeah, I'll make you Duke of Ottawa. Wait, if you're Duke of Ottawa, how easy is it for me to reach out and touch you? Not very. That sounds like a bad idea. So, the way Canadian law adapted, these groups started to sort of evolve into an aristocracy, like the family compact, which were these groups that evolved into an aristocracy in Canada. And while they were, doing their whole pseudo Canadian aristocracy thing, people weren't always doing so well, right? And there were rebellions. Actually, at least in 1837 and 1838, the major rebellions, we had to come in and help the Canadians put down the rebellion because the Canadians couldn't stop them on their side, right? We had to send forces up to Michigan and to northwestern New York to make sure that the Canadian rebels stopped hopping back across the border and then hopping back across the border into Canada. The problem was that these rebels were basically arguing for we shouldn't have an aristocracy, right? And as I thought about this, yes, there are instances where America has had an aristocracy, but it's very flimsy, right? The Carnegies didn't stay the Carnegies. The Rockefellers, for the most part, didn't stay the Rockefellers. The problem that was happening in Canada was you had these families that just kept on hanging on. And the result of these rebellions was, well, the Canadians kicked the crap out of them, and killed a lot of them very publicly, which was slightly different from how the Americans handled most of their rebellions, like Shays and the Whiskey Rebellion. Yeah, we showed no mercy, but for the most part, everyone else who was involved, besides like a ringleader, go home, stop shooting at us. Okay, great. Canada was not as gentle with its rebels, who were arguably arguing for more responsive government. And actually, in the end, when the British sent basically a group to investigate the causes of the rebellion, most of the causes that the rebels had been fighting for got validated for having responsible government. So Canada's relationship with rebellion is very different than ours. We would look at someone on our end blocking the bridge and using terrorism and say, bullshit. Where's my mini nuke?
Yeah, you say that, but I think we've seen it proven out in January 6th that we wouldn't, in fact, respond as long as it was white guys. That in reality, it would take a gaggle of black and brown people blocking a bridge. We seem to only give a fuck when our highways are blocked by Black Lives Matter, but not Cletus and Bubba. And I'm not convinced that we would do anything. I'm convinced that we would play softball because their Nazi brethren are in the law enforcement culture.
I mean, but I don't think that we would not be as gentle for this long. Let me put it to you that way.
For this long, maybe not.
No, like a day. You get a day. Period.
But we would have brought them, coffee and an escort to a VIP ranch. I mean, the ways in which the United States would softball these motherfuckers can't be understated. But you're right; it probably wouldn't have gone on.
Yeah, if they wanted to hang out on a major, if they wanted to blockade the port of, I don't know, Los Angeles or Miami or New Orleans or New York for more than 24 hours, fuck that. Troops are going in, boys and girls.
I guess it's
gonna be a party.
The balancing factor is the almighty dollar. At the end of the day, I can bitch about the black and brown factor, but the only color that matters in America is green, and that would probably be the deciding factor. Like, you bitches are costing us money, so fuck right off.
Yeah.
Willow points out we've since taken a very laid back approach on certain social issues we really shouldn't be ignoring. So I understand there's a difference in the organization of it as well, like the provinces and how the police versus military can and do take action. My thing that I was blown away by was that the U.S. was so patient with this Canadian interference. To me, if I were in charge, I would have ramped this up as an international crisis and started calling it an act of warfare.
Well,
low key. I wouldn't have waved my dick in Trudeau's face and said,
No. Yeah, okay, first of all, it's basically been standard U.S. policy for the past, I don't know, actually, not as long as you think, probably only about the past 70, 80 years, to not use Canada and war in the same sentence ever.
Well, I find it interesting that there was no diplomatic pressure, no one going to Trudeau saying, bro, we're going to fucking bomb it if you don't.
No, well, again, that's part of we don't do that. See, fun little factoid. There's a reason the Canadian Mounties look like they do. Because the original idea was, well, in case the Americans invade, we should have a mounted rifle regiment in the Western provinces. But if we have a mounted, or not just regiment, mounted rifle division in the Western provinces, but if we have a mounted rifle division in the Western provinces, it'll look like we're arming up for war. And that would be bad because the Americans would send 5 friggin' divisions and they would be pissed off. They would be angry. So we're going to call them police. So thus gives us the Royal Canadian Mounted Police.
Right.
Which is why the red uniforms, everything else, is they were actually intended to be a military division. And they just called them police so that we wouldn't start shooting at them automatically. But I mean, like, the thing is that we don't threaten war with Canada. And, like, these are also the guys I want to point out who, when most of our people are in trouble, the Canadians are the ones who show up with the fake passports to get our people out of trouble. It's not a good idea to piss off the Canadians. They are very useful. Less people hate them. Also, we can pretend to be them half the time as long as I can keep y'all out my mouth.
Well, what I'm kind of leaning toward there wouldn't necessarily be direct opposition, more of a hey, this is a diplomatic crisis. I did find it interesting how this little interruption to one side of a bridge created such a vast interruption to commerce on this side of the river. And I also,
river. You mean the big lakes?
well, in the case of the Detroit River or the Detroit River, that's it's just a river with a bridge. I mean,
the French don't call it Detroit.
I know I'm joking about the fact that only in America could you take a perfectly reasonable French word and turn it into Detroit.
I'm pretty sure it's Detroit even for the French.
A long fucking time ago, it was not, and we just went and ran with it.
I'm like literally like me in 3 years of French class are trying to translate Detroit into something that doesn't sound dirty. I'm failing. I'm failing right
David.
now.
You can say.
I'm sorry, Mrs. McKnight. I have failed you. I have failed you so badly.
I forgot because I got curious about it when I realized how close. Like we went to Detroit, and I was like, "Holy shit, Canada's right there." It like just didn't never meant. I didn't live up here. I didn't care. I never mentally processed it, and then there we are looking across, going, "I'll be damned." There it is, right there. And so I started digging up history and found a whole bunch of background. So I'm still not saying it. It would be Detroit.
Detroit?
A weird TRWA.
Oh my god.
Thing.
The bot is back.
Oh, look, the Russian bot has things to say about the Detroit pronunciation. Apparently it's
We triggered it.
Yeah, somehow. So anyway, let's rewind to how this started, because I figured, when all this shit started hitting the fan and the news, I was like, okay, so what were they originally pissed off about? Let's go look that up. So apparently, and this is what blows my mind, it's not an inside Canada concern. It was simply originally a protest by truckers pissed off that they had a vaccine mandate for truckers
to cross
traveling into the country from the U.S., which is primarily going to affect, drumroll please, U.S. bubbas.
Yeah.
But happened to also affect Canadian truckers that had made the loop.
Well, I mean, because here's the problem. You have to remember 95% of Canada's population lives along the border, like within 100 miles of the border. So I can see where truckers doing the loop would have a problem. But yes, it is primarily going to affect U.S.
But
truckers.
let's be clear.
But
90% of them are vaccinated. 90% of them are vaccinated. 10% of them decided they had a problem with the idea that their government would be as audacious as to say, if you travel down south to the land of fuckwits that refuse to accept science, we're going to need you to either be vaccinated against said fuckwits or spend 2 weeks in quarantine after hobnobbing with fuckwits.
We live here, damn it. And let me tell you, it's not good.
Exactly. So what initially
Why would you not want to be vaccinated?
Basically a reasonable policy.
Why?
And the most amusing part of this is that all these right-wing shitcocks that were all about banning people from China, and they were totally cool with travel bans from other places, they were all in for that. But once it affected their travel from the U.S., the cesspool of goddamn viral fucking shitsville that we've been for 2 years, then they decided to get up in arms and pissed about it. And of course, they decided to tack on every extreme / Nazi fucking right-wing bullshit cause that they could.
Can I want to respond to Willow's comment right here. If anyone told me when I was younger we would be dealing with an invasion of uneducated inbreds, I would have asked, like the movie Canadian Bacon, Willow, you knew you had Alberta. You knew you had Alberta. No, at no point during this conversation have you ever said, what's Alberta? You knew you had Alberta.
So at this point, this incredibly small minority of truckers has gained all kinds of attention and become champions of the American right wing. And then now we have here all sorts of trucker dumbfucks trying to talk about doing their own thing. They threatened
No.
to do a Super Bowl blockade, and that apparently either didn't happen or the LAPD made it abundantly clear that they could get the fuck out. I don't know which.
I mean, I'm sure the LAPD was more than eloquent in their explanation that if you make us look bad, I will fuck you up so very, very hard.
Yeah. I mean, at this point,
we are not the Mounties. We have no limitation on what we will do.
we've been listening to these interviews. They've been pulling these fucking twats out of their truck cabs to give them interviews on media, national and worldwide media, and they're saying stuff like, I can't go to the barbershop, I can't go to the movie theater, I can't go blah, 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 And it's like, okay, we gave you every chance in the fucking book. If you don't want to join civilization and get at least 2 primary doses of a reputable vaccine, not Johnson & Johnson, you are a fucking idiot. Fuck off.
Well, I mean,
it's not also asking the world.
I mean, also, I mean, the sad thing is, this is the more frustrating thing is, they've placed the onus now, like what's happening in Ottawa, what's pissing off the Ottawans so badly, is that most Ottoman shopkeepers are saying, this is the law, we want to obey the law. And they're showing up demanding to be served without a mask and without a vaccine. And the shopkeepers are saying, listen, maybe it's not fair that we're in charge of having to enforce this, but why are you trying to make this our problem that you won't get vaxxed or wear a mask?
Right.
I mean,
and that's the thing that all of this always pisses me off, because these people managed to get away with selling this zero-sum version of reality, even in America with the fucking Supreme Court bullshit where they struck down a perfectly reasonable limitation. Everybody talks about vaccine mandate. They never talk about the other version of the reality, which is, if you insist on being a stupid fuckwit, you can continue to wear a mask, and you can continue a testing regimen, and you can continue to make your personal life a living fucking inconvenient hell. If that's where you want to be, Bubba, you go ahead and do it. We gave you the avenue. These people act like, in Canada and the United States, that we're sending an armored personnel carrier to their front fucking porch. 8 guys are knocking on their door, dragging them out, holding them down, and shoving a syringe in their butthole, and that's not what's happening.
Could we, though?
Oh, I would be all for it at this fucking point. I'm so fucking far over it. Like, it could happen. And it's the same as ever referring to anything that happened in the United States as lockdowns.
I want every anti-vax person who hears this to hear my laugh of joy at the thought.
Right.
Like, someone put a syringe up your butthole because
the concept of lockdown, like they use vaccine mandate with abandon, and lockdown. I hate that phrase, even from perfectly middle of the road journalists that refer to the lockdown. This country never had a fucking lockdown.
No,
almost no country on this planet had a COVID lockdown. There were measures to augment the defensibility of the population. There were no lockdowns except certain places. Like, I think maybe China pulled it off for a week.
No, China can pull it off pretty strictly. They'll lock your doors for you, so that's not a problem.
Like, you can't describe America as being ever in a lockdown. I mean, never lost the ability to come and go freely in my personal vehicle from my property into public space. That is not a lockdown. Unless there is a vehicle on the street with a large caliber barrel pointed at your home, and you cannot open the door for fear of getting your fucking teeth blown across the landscape, you are not in a lockdown, you fucking idiots. But they get away with saying it every fucking day. The tyranny that they lie about and represent as truth is horseshit and they know it. Some of them don't know it; they're not smart enough. But it's absolute horseshit, which of course
it's all
means that we have to deploy the horseshit.
There we go. He deployed it. It's deployed. Lucas's banner is deployed as opposed to mine. I'm so used to my banners being deployed, but Lucas
Somehow the horseshit fumes always land on David's side of the screen.
Fuck off.
Here, I'll take one for the team. Breathe deep. Breathe in the horseshit just for you.
That sounds really fucking dirty. I don't know how I feel about that right now.
And it's not as dirty as the twat. Oh boy. So hopefully they're about to put an end to this bullshit, but then we get to see it inevitably migrate into the US. And I'm going to be salty again because I will remain salty for the rest of my life that there was not a major cleanup on aisle January 6th required from the human chowder that should have been splattered all over the fucking mall. I just never will not be angry that law enforcement and military action didn't match what we all goddamn know would have happened if it were a bunch of brown people on January. So they would have nuked the whole fucking Capitol. They would have just decided that it was an infestation they had to completely get rid of. And I feel like that's what's happening in Canada. I feel like there's a lot of free pass to fucking honkies going on. And I fear that when it inevitably starts to occur here in the US, that they're going to let them get away with absolute fucking garbage that they shouldn't get away with because they're white and because they're right wing, like so many of the law enforcement in this country. And they're going to fucking kid glove these motherfuckers just like they did on January 6th. And we're going to be plagued by this shit. Coming soon to a town near you, these assholes that say that they can't work and the supply chain blah 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 are going to find a way to take time out to park their truck and show out with their fucking redneck bullshit. And I'm not looking forward to it.
I mean, I think at the end of the day, we have to start imagining. I want to say this is something we need to start imagining is a world in which we actually have a more diverse transportation system. It's been one of my things that's been pissing me off about this entire, well, we have a logistics bottleneck. Well, yeah, of course you do. Because you didn't care about how long it took you to get anything for the past 15, 20 years, right?
Right.
You would just order it in bulk and it would come from, it would magically appear, as far as you were concerned, it would magically appear from China or Indonesia or Bangladesh or someplace else. And one of the ironies is of all the, well, I as an investor, you're spending too much money on labor in the US. Well, hey, if we had a factory where we sold stuff,
Well,
right?
Heaven forbid.
I'll be damned.
Heaven forbid in capitalism you ever, have people and talent and ability on hand for when you need it, without it being viewed as a waste of money. It's one of the most ridiculous things. The same assholes that enjoy the security of an army that twiddles its thumbs until we need it, of a fire department that twiddles its thumbs until we need it, of police that twiddle their thumbs until we need them. These same shitty fake patriots don't want to pay their own employees to twiddle their thumbs until you need them, which is the way shit works in the real world.
And when I've worked in IT, that's always been one of the things that would always shock me is how people would treat people in those exact positions to say, and I would sit there and make the argument to CEOs and all sorts of other people, like, what do I do for 3 hours a day? I read Reddit. I read Reddit. The reason you have me is not because there's always a fire. The reason you have me is because there might be a fire, and what the hell are you going to do when there is?
These exact same cunts are quick to employ overnight fat ass fucking private security to watch their buildings, who almost never do anything. They justify that, but they can't justify having people on hand that just hang out until they're needed. It's one of the most fucked up American values. I don't know how we got on that tangent, but it always fires me up. I like that Willow is pledging as a local to the situation to keep us posted. Trudeau called out for the military to step in, become our version of a civil
this
war.
can become our version.
I think you need more than a couple percentage points of the population to form one side of a civil war.
Willow, unless Trudeau is calling out the military to start marching to the Pacific. Let me tell you, I don't know how much they teach you about our Civil War.
I mean,
when someone says Civil War to us, we imagine burning everything down that could not be fucking carried off.
The only thing to move through Georgia faster than NASCAR, Sherman. So we're creeping up on time. It's probably time to hang it up, and we've also got a very, very important piece of entertainment to tend to, ladies and gentlemen, because currently, as we speak, our Preds are behind 1-0 with the Washington Capitals, so it's time to adjourn and go watch some Preds. So clearly, they need me and David yelling through the TV screens to encourage them to do better.
Stop fucking up, Soros! Stop fucking up! Stop fucking up!
I'm not sure where they are. I don't know who's the home team.
It's not here. It's got to be in Washington.
It's in Washington. The land of terrible sports logos, Washington.
So we need to finish with some sort of commentary on the Commanders.
Oh my god! Oh boy!
So for those of you who don't understand this topic, so for years, Washington, the city of Washington, D.C., their football team has been called the Redskins, which is obviously probably not very politic, and that it's a racial epithet. They covered this up by having the owner pay a particular chief of a particular tribe enough money for him to retire very, very, very nicely with what the owner was paying him to justify his ridiculously racist team name. Finally, enough pressure got built. Also, that particular chief died. So now they are the Washington Commanders. I would like to point out they went an entire season, and I'm never going to call them anything else after this, of just being the Washington football team, which therefore, like, the abbreviation that we used in-house was WAFT.
I mean,
it was WAFT. W-A-F-T. Washington football team. WAFT.
Obviously, because I'm a brand and logo and design guy, obviously I have issues and concerns with the execution, which I'm pulling all these things up as we speak so we can make fun of it before we go.
No, the execution is just awful.
What I had to say is, I don't mind the name. I think the name's fine, and it's in line with what is it they got Capitals, Admirals. They got a lot of shit that's very.
Who the hell is the Admirals?
Hold on. I think Admirals. Let's see.
Washington Admirals?
Admiral, never mind. Maybe I'm wrong about that. That appears to be a Quidditch. Generals, Wizards. Wizards was what I was thinking about, which is funny because the Quidditch kids wanted Wizards, but couldn't have it because of the basketball team.
Everyone noticed that I have left the screen.
So it's Capitals, Generals basketball, Wizards basketball.
Over Lucas claiming the Washington.
Dude, I'm not lying. It's just a Quidditch. It's a nerd thing, and that's why I had it in my head. I mean, it's legit. They have a logo and everything, and one blonde player with a pretty nice ass. So you can fuck off. Oh my god. They have a whole thing. Holy shit! I don't know what this Quidditch deal is, but there's a lot of teams. I'm gonna have to look into this. Anyway, so Commanders totally fits the bill, right? But here's the execution. And I didn't get to trim these images for screen, so we're just going to stick with it. Here's my problem. I don't know what agency or creative outlet got paid money to type words between two lines, but this is a fucking terrible iteration of a logo. The W I can accept and defend, but the Washington Commanders title itself, ooh boy. But I did see something that gives it dignity in my book. For me, this will always be the treatment of the Washington Commanders that counts.
Which,
and the bonus points,
considering their providence with their asshole racist owner. Yes.
Well, what's even better about that is I am 99% sure that is a canon uniform worn by Cobra Commander in one of the storylines, probably in the comic. I believe he did a thing with the Crimson Guard or something. Anyway, I thought that was a hilarious contribution to the buzz. But honestly, I mean, it's a fine name. I'm fine with that. I just think that the logo blows, and the initial is okay, but they had so much low-hanging fruit that they could have, like, it doesn't make any sense that they didn't zero in on military, like, commander symbolism. There are Navy, Army symbols. There are so many things.
I want to put the stars. Like, if you just put, like, the stars. But you know why they didn't? I'll tell you why. I don't know if you can look it up, but so the symbol for general in the Confederate Army, which, like, most people don't realize, which I'm sure, like, in their history, like, someone would pick up on, is little star, big star, little star, right? That's the easy, quick and easy, like, look, Commander. I swear to God, someone, I almost promise you, someone threw that down in the logo meeting, and then someone looked it up and like, guys, I think they'll think that we're racists.
Yeah, but like, if you look at Commander, what is this? Let's see, Navy. It's like 3 stripes. They could have done that.
That's not that sexy.
But they could have added 1 stripe and fucking nailed it. Like, it's astonishing.
That would have been the Washington Captains.
4. I think 4 would be. I always get the real shit mixed up with Star Trek. That's the problem. 3 is Commander in Star Trek. I can't separate obviously, because of my Quidditch comment, I can't separate the nerd world from real life. But there were military insignia options that they had. Commander in the Navy apparently is either 3 bars on the shoulder with a star above, which would have been a great way to iterate the logo, or
I'm okay with that.
The one little leaf, the silver leaf. I don't know what kind of leaf it is.
No, that's land based. That's Army. That's the oak leaf.
You know, there's all kinds of options that they could have gone with, and instead they just put 2 fucking lines and the words Washington Commanders between them.
Also, the problem with American military and the oak leaf is that's also the major's insignia.
Yeah.
It gets really fucking confusing.
If I can't have Cobra Commander, then I will just consider Commander William Riker to be my official mascot for the Washington Commanders, and I will just imagine him stepping over a chair to sit down.
They still suck.
Anyway, it is that time, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank Willow for pointing out what I hope that everyone says when they watch us. I became a huge fan of you guys now. I love your rants and opinions. We appreciate everybody joining us as usual. We're here every week, or we try to be, in one form or another, and we're really glad you joined us. And we will never be the type to beg you to smash that bell or whatever, but we would appreciate a like or a follow. It helps us to build up the numbers, and if we can get high enough, we can have that vanity URL on YouTube, and who doesn't want that?
Yeah. No. We can go for the little golden picture that I keep on seeing all my favorites have.
But anyway,
Yeah, we
it's
should
time
do
to
that.
sign off and go
Bring
watch
your
some
friends and
Predators,
have
who at
fun.
the end of the first period are still behind 1-0 Washington Capitals. So it's time to go cheer on our televisions. Ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate you joining us.
You
With this,
son of a bitch.
with that, we will sign off with our typical good night
Good evening
and
and
good
good
luck.